So, as I started off this week, it has been a rather big week for bills entering Parliament and starting their passage through. And of course, it also coincides with Labour's 100th day in power. And I think one of the big things definitely to talk about, as we were talking about this morning, is the Renters Reform Bill. That is a big step forward. That now gives renters and does a lot of stuff for people who rent a lot more power than they've ever had before. Like, it is a big improvement for millions of people. But as I said before in that video, could go even further. Now, that even further is, of course, rent caps. And that would be a very, very fundamental step forward. But as I've said before, the rent reform bill is very, very much a step forward. It is progress, more progress than we've seen in the last 14 years, of stuff like this in this area or sector. So it is a big step forward. But I will agree, rent caps here need to now be seriously thought about. And there is now pressure being put on people like Angela Rayner and other ministers to introduce rent caps, to advance the argument, to say, okay, you've now done this, but now we need to do this because there is a problem with rent's becoming completely unaffordable. And this is now one of the biggest problems for homelessness, in the UK. So there is a definite cause to do it. And there's even a very, very good argument to do it because local councils spend a lot of money on stuff like this, where again, if they didn't have to spend this amount of money on these types of things, then maybe this could be spent building social housing, etc., etc., etc. So it's always the case of when you look at these things, where money needs to be spent, where it should be gone. And rent caps are a perfect example, because if you cap rent, then all of a sudden this can solve a lot of problems, especially a lot of people becoming homeless. And now councils can then use that money that they maybe would have spent on that somewhere else, because it's not much of a problem that it used to be, because you've brought in rent caps. But the housing crisis as a whole is a big mess. I should say housing crisis, housing disaster. I'd say more of a disaster. But it is very, very much multifaceted. We do need to do a lot of things to really solve this problem, not just build not only just new houses, but tackle renting, really tackle, houses being used sort of as an asset. That's something that needs to be dealt as well. Lots of things need to be solved, done in this sector. However, there was a letter, which I do want to go over, sent by some of the UK's biggest unions, even a house company actually added to this as well. But it would be a very, very good thing to do. So, of course, we're going to go into this letter, but before we do that, please remember to click on the like, the share, the subscribe button if you're new, ring the bell, and of course, down below, there's the Patreon page, there's the Buy Me Coffee link, there's the YouTube thank you button, and of course, there's the Pony Club down below as well. So, thank you very much to everyone who does help and support the channel that way. So, let's dig into this then. So, this was a letter that got sent to Angela Rayner, and this is what it had to say. So, between 2021 and 2025, the government is set to spend at least £70 billion worth of taxpayers' money on housing benefit for private tenancies. And of course, an additional £1.74 billion now annually spent on temporary accommodation. So that's something that is very, very much people do, and is, I think, definitely a problem to be brought up, that most of the taxpayers' money almost becomes a subsidy in a way that gets sent to private tenants, to sort of landlords, which, bear in mind, okay, if that's the case and it keeps someone, in a in a home, in accommodation, so be it. Maybe it's the bad trade-off we've got to, the compromise we've got to currently live with. But this is one of the things where we should look at, how do we tax landlords? Are they being taxed efficiently? Yeah, there's a lot of questions, again, as I said, should be asked in and around this. But they do continue. with that if more affordable rents would of course then take pressure off councils and of course the public purse. This would now free up funds to invest in our much needed social and of course council housing. Um, they say that the introduction of these rent caps will now invest now in an expansion of mass public house building and would give councils enough now recourse to actually buy homes that private landlords will then want to sell and convert them now into social housing. So I do think, again, bringing in rent caps would be a good solution to this. And I do think there is a aim where maybe someone's living in that and the landlord wants to sell. The council can come in and say, no, we're going to turn that into social housing. You know, that person then who's living there is safe because it's now council owned, council controlled. It's social housing. So there is, I think, a big argument to be that. How many councils can be that? What exactly those powers need to be? Do they have those powers? Because the way that they can maybe act faster on something like that. Again, all certainly big questions I think do need a bit more answers and more in depth in around that. But where should these powers go? Where should renting caps be? Should it be regional mayors that get it? Should it be like an England wide thing? Should it be a devolved thing? Uh, who knows? I struggle as to where maybe best to put it, but maybe it should be a regional, maybe it should be a regional mayor level power. Um, I don't know. Maybe that is maybe the best area to sort of have it where that power should rest and lie. Maybe it should be with local councils. I don't know. Let me know what you think down below because that's always a question that comes up when we look at this. So it also says that the overwhelming majority now of new homes will, of course, be very much unaffordable to people now on lower incomes. There are, of course, widespread concerns that the targets promised will, of course, not specify or even significantly decrease prices. Generation Rent estimates that at least 20 homes per over 1,000 people would only actually improve affordability by 2.8%. So we've been through this before. House building, good. We need it, but it's the right kind of homes. And it's big housing companies, which actually they bring up next. They said, combined with this fact that major house builders such as Barratt are now reducing their building targets, it is very clear that house building alone cannot tackle the scale and urgency of the affordability crisis. And it is right. The affordability crisis is part of the whole housing crisis. It's all just a big muddle of crises bundled in together into a sack. But no, they are right. Major house builders like Barratt are doing this. They are lowering their house building targets, or they then build the wrong type of house that people who are looking to house or need housing can then not afford. They tend to build 4 5-bedroom houses, not the type of housing, the social housing, or 1 or 2-bedroom houses that traditionally most people would sort of see as sort of like their first lot of housing. But that is because that's not as worth as much selling the bigger house. So it is very, very important. And this, of course, goes into a lot of other things. This then comes about, insecure living conditions for children. It affects children's learning as well. So that affects education. Again, big, big root, of course. And I do really think the pressure needs to now be put on to introduce rent caps, to make this a thing. Where that powers lies, again, maybe that's a conversation for another time as to where. I'm sure, again, people can have that in the comments down below as well. But I do now think rent caps, the way to go. This is definitely the thing that we want to see and certainly be pushed by and done by this Labour government, because I really do think that will happen if we do put enough pressure on them to do that. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.